Okay, guys, now we're going to start with assembly of the Pontiac Super Stocker engine. Now, as you can see here, it's going to be a very similar assembly to what happened with the GTO. So we're just going to get started cutting the parts out and checking our fit of all the pieces. Alright, guys. Now, we're looking at part number, on the tree it says part number 17, which is the intake manifold. But on the instructions, as you see here, they labeled it as part number 25. So you have to be aware of that the numbering is incorrect there. You also appear to have an extra set of cylinder heads, as this seems to have parts for more than one version of this engine. But for the Super Stocker, we're just going to go with what they tell you to use, which I think it's part 17, because I don't see another intake manifold anywhere in the kit. So we're just going to cut that out and see how this fits. Alright, guys, now you see here, this engine actually seems to have a molded in part for the oil filter. So the oil filter housing is molded right into the block on this one, unlike the 70 GTO, which kind of had just the oil filter floating out in space. But this one actually has a oil filter housing built onto the block that the oil filter will sit into, so that looks a bit more realistic. Okay, guys, so then that's going to be all the work we're going to do to this engine to get it prepped for paint. As you can see, all of the seams have been taken care of on the transmission, and once we prime it, we won't have to worry too much about, well, then we'll see if there's going to be any more work that we need to do here. Similar to the 70 GTO engine, the top seam, the seam on the front, and the seam underneath will all be covered by the components that will fit over those seams, such as the intake manifold, which, now that we got that little bit of confusion straightened out, we know is misnumbered on the instruction sheet, and that's going to fit right on top of the engine there. We have our carburetor, which really isn't a horrible looking piece. I mean, I know you could 3D print something nicer, but this actually is a pretty nice looking piece here. Much nicer than what's on the 70 GTO engine. And then we have our intake manifold and water pump assembly. I mean, not the intake manifold, sorry guys. Front cover and water pump assembly, which is also a pretty nice looking bit. We have the starter, which, not the best starter I've ever seen, but also not horrible. You know, they retooled this kit and added a bunch of new stuff to it. And they really did a nice job with updating a vintage kit. Now here's the whole belt drive assembly, which one thing I do like about this assembly is that they kept the belts very thin so that they look pretty scale correct. I mean, they could probably be a little thinner, but for our purposes, these are going to work out just nicely. So they did a really nice job with the belt drive on this kit. But the most interesting portion of this kit are the exhaust manifolds. Now, yeah, they did need quite a bit of cleaning up to get rid of all the seams and a little bit of flash that was in between the pipes. But this is a really interesting setup. And I'm going to give you a picture right here of what they look like when they're assembled from the directions. And take a look at this. I mean, it's just kind of weird, almost like wings wrapping up around the engine. So I really can't wait to start assembling that and seeing what that looks like in real life. Now, the one place where I'm sort of disappointed so far is in this air cleaner assembly. It just looks to me to be too small. I mean, here we have the filter portion of the assembly here. And the cover, which it's cool that they made it two separate parts. But I don't know, to me they just look a little too small. We'll see when everything's together, how it looks when it all goes together. So that's pretty much it, guys. We got all the parts and pieces, apart from the valve covers, which are being stripped right now. Got them in my little tub of bleach to strip the chrome off of them. And other than that, we're ready to go to primer for all of these engine parts. So we're going to end this episode here. And the next episode is going to start with the 2.8 liter V6 from the Fiero. As we're going to run through putting that together, some details we're going to be adding, and just whatever notes we happen to think up as we're going along the assembly of it. So that's it, guys. I'm going to let this one end here, and I will see you on the next one.